Hi, and welcome to NutriAging. I am your host, Kadir. This show is all about living your best life. I am excited to introduce you to our amazing guest, Dr. Kristi Vaughan. Dr. Vaughan is a certified functional medicine practitioner with a ton of experience in nutrition, and she has helped a lot of people improve their health and well-being. Dr. Vaughan's approach is all about science. She creates personalized plans to help people overcome chronic conditions and achieve better lives and better health. So let's get ready to learn from Dr. Vaughan's epic knowledge and experience and give her a huge welcome to the show. Welcome, Dr. Vaughan.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the intro.
Oh, of course. After reading your history and how much experience you have, well, I have my first question for you is why did you choose to go into functional medicine?
Actually, for my own reason. I was in doctorate program and I had my mercury fill-ins taken out pre-school because everybody knows that's, mercury toxicity is not good for you. You need to have it taken out. And in doing so, I started getting body aches, brain fog, fatigue, bone pain, and I just was not myself.
From getting them removed?
Yes. And so I was going to all these doctors in school, trying to study to be a doctor. I'm going to all these doctors going, something's going on with me. I don't feel myself. I'm having a hard time studying, remembering all this kind of stuff. And the doctors all said, no, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. And thank goodness my school offered functional medicine. And serendipitously, I was guided to take the course. I think there was like 200 of us that took the course initially, and about 20 of us graduated with a certificate.
Wow.
And I actually applied what I was learning to myself. I ran my labs, ran heavy metal, mold, all these different kinds of things. And I found out that I had a subclinical thyroid, which would have progressed to thyroid disease if
you were your own guinea pig, and this is how you found out about
exactly
your own stuff.
So I tell my patients, I'm your guinea pig. I'm the guinea pig. I do everything on myself first before I actually apply it with a patient. And it started right there. Wow. So I had subclinical thyroid, which just means it would have exacerbated into thyroid disease if not controlled from a root cause, which was mercury toxicity. So I ran my heavy metals labs and my mercury toxicity was off the chart. Literally the week I started doing the detox, the symptoms went away.
Wow, the same week?
The same week. I remember
that's impressive.
The bone pain and the body ache, like flu-like symptoms, stopped after doing a week of the detox. Of course, it took me longer than a week to detox from heavy metals.
Of course.
But I noticed a change drastically, pretty immediate.
That's amazing. So say I was a patient who came to you for the first time and didn't really know what was going on. And I have, like a bunch of different symptoms that, doctors have told me, all your tests are normal. And I come to you for the first time. What can I expect? What kind of experience can I expect?
So what I do is I typically, before each new patient, I prepare for about an hour to two. And really get a good idea of history, questions. I write down follow-up questions, all their symptoms. And I have an idea of maybe some triggering events. So I let them tell the history, because 90% of the diagnosis is in the history. So I listen to the history. I get a lot of answers. From that, I ask follow-up questions that I'm guided to look at some of the root cause and triggers. And from that point, then I look at maybe what additional tests do we need to run to confirm or rule in or rule out what I'm suspect is a root cause or a trigger. And so after we go through the test that I'm recommending, we'll decide, hey, is this the good plan? Does this work for you? Do we want to go fast? Do we want to go slow? Some patients are all in and want to do everything. And some need to take it slow, which is totally fine.
Absolutely.
Because you can't work on everything at once.
Everyone's different as well.
Yeah.
And everyone responds differently.
Exactly.
I'm sure. So taking back that you said something very interesting about like triggers. So if someone tells you kind of their history and they're like, I woke up one day and I started having foggy brain and I couldn't concentrate and this and that, But they didn't necessarily mention, for example, the removal of their fillings. Like they didn't think of it as a special event, and that was when it started. How do you figure out what was the trigger?
So I know now to ask for, hey, do you have mercury fillings and are they replaced, because of my own experience.
Right.
I now know to ask, have you ever lived in a moldy home, or suspect mold, because of my own experience. So I think, again, have you ever had a concussion, because of my own experience. So
Amazing.
These things I think is important to look at and to rule in and rule out.
Right.
And a lot of docs don't look at those, triggering events. And I also look at childhood trigger events. So there's a lot of research on childhood adverse events, and each childhood adverse event triggers autoimmune, or the likelihood of autoimmune is increased. So, childhood triggering events, if they're pretty traumatic and can trigger the autoimmune.
Absolutely. Can you give us some examples of childhood experiences that could trigger autoimmune? Just a real quick rundown.
So anything from like a divorce, or
really?
A death, or abuse, unfortunately, or anything like that.
Interesting.
Car accidents.
So it doesn't necessarily always have to be like a physical thing that you ingested or inhaled, or it could just be like literally a traumatic experience or an emotional experience. Interesting. So can you tell us a little bit about the difference between conventional medicine and functional medicine? Why do you feel that functional medicine was more helpful than conventional medicine, and why didn't conventional medicine figure out what you had and can help, don't these doctors study for many, many, many years to figure out what people have? And then a lot of the time, no, all your labs are normal and everything's fine.
I think that's one of the most important questions today, and one of the most important things for people to really understand.
Yes.
Every doctor wants to help, every doctor is trained in a different field. Right?
Yes.
And so when it comes to conventional medicine, the way I try to teach my patients is you go to an emergency room and they say, everything's fine. That means you're not dying, right?
Right.
So when you go to a conventional medicine doc and they say everything looks fine, that means you're not diseased. So it's really disease care and sick care. Now, there are some other doctors in the conventional medicine model that look beyond that, but that's really their training. They're there to look at the disease. If your labs are high or low, then you're in a disease state, and give a medication or surgery or whatever. With functional medicine, and this is where people get lost, is because they're going to the wrong place for a certain answer and a treatment. And it's not well known. It should be, but it's not. For me, it is. And it's like second nature. Right. But not everyone knows that. And it's very confusing to the average person that's just trying to seek out healthcare. Even as a doctor, it gets very confusing. Right? Sure. As a patient, as a doctor being a patient. Yeah, right.
So, every little part has its own entire department, right? Its own specialization.
Yeah. So, and functional medicine is what, you could say we look for root cause issues that are driving disease. And it's really based on a patient-centered model. So we spend, time with a patient, 30 minutes with a patient, and we listen to the patient's history, trying to gather everything like any other doctor. However, we're looking for root cause, and we do specialty testing that maybe insurance might not pay for, but it's necessary to look at subclinical issues or even disease. Right. And so by doing the specialty testing, then we get a plan of action and a treatment plan. And the treatment would be more lifestyle, nutraceutical, stress management. I mean, a lot of different, natural remedies and natural models.
When a patient is coming to you and they have questions about their health, and they have gone to several specialists and several doctors who could not help them, how do you approach that patient? What do you say that convinces them that, yes, I can help you in a different way?
So it's important to look at the whole health history, obviously, which any doctor does this. However, I think I'm trained to listen differently. I'm trained to listen for triggering events, root cause. And so, I say that the top 4 reasons why people are sick or diseased or not having their best life is, number 1, the food that they eat, right? So we got to look at lifestyle.
Okay.
Number 2 is toxification or, detoxification pathways, biotransformation.
Okay. That's a big word right there. So continue, but we're going back to that.
Yeah. And then infections, so gut infections.
Okay.
And then the other ones are like, other toxicities like heavy metals or mold or, brain issues.
Okay.
So when you look at these, what was that, top 5 or 6 reasons or root causes in a person, and not to mention nutrient deficiencies, vitamin, mineral, nutrient deficiencies. When you look at these things, you can't guarantee results, but what you can do is, when a patient says, Dr. Vaughan, can you guarantee you can help me? I'm like, okay, first, if any doctor guarantees that you can help them, run. I mean, really, because what I do is I support your body's natural ability to heal. Okay. That's what we do. And so we look at these root causes. And if you got too much of the bad guys and not enough of the good stuff, and we balance that out by giving you the good stuff and removing the bad, then does it make sense that your body's going to heal? And they always say yes.
Right.
And I say, how your body's going to heal? You want better sleep? Hopefully we're going to get that.
Right.
But how your body does it in what order, I don't know.
Okay.
But we do strive to hit their markers and their goals, and usually we do, obviously. But, again, it's left up to the person's body to heal.
Now, I have a couple of questions. First of all, let's go back to the top 5 you just listed. Can you go a little bit more in depth about those? They sounded very interesting, and I don't know very much about them.
Yes. So number 1 is food. I mean, this is what a patient can control.
Okay.
And you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to know a lot of information. I know it's very confusing because there's so many different diets
out there. My goodness.
Right?
And then every year there's a new fad, and oh my goodness.
And I try to teach my patients, forget about diets.
Okay.
I don't like diets.
Okay.
I don't like people that want a diet. I don't want people be in that mindset.
And that term on its own, it just makes me feel like I have to eat less, but I love food. Like,
and it's short term. Right?
True.
So I like lifestyle change.
Okay. Yes.
And some days your lifestyle change is great. You're right on the mark.
Yes.
And some days maybe you're off.
Okay.
But I think what people do is they get off their lifestyle change, eating healthy, and they go, oh, forget it. I just blew my diet. So I'm just going to stay on this crappy thing and eat however I want.
Forget it. I already broke it. Might as well just keep going.
So the goal is to make it a lifestyle.
Okay.
Right. And
so it's just a habit. It's every day. It's kind of like natural to you. It becomes second nature.
Exactly. And I think it's important to look at food sensitivities because this can really point you into your lifestyle change. Whatever you should be eating that is supportive of good health for you.
And that's something that you test for
Yes.
sensitivities?
Yep, food sensitivities. And then the other thing is biotransformation, detoxification pathways. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like most people have methylation SNPs. So
I have no idea what you just said.
detoxification SNPs really is what it is. So where a person cannot eliminate and detox their body naturally.
Okay.
So therefore, they're holding on to the toxins, and let's say they're a cup, right?
Okay.
You're a cup, and your cup is getting full of toxins to a point where you're overflowing.
Uh-huh.
So when that cup overflows with toxins, then you're upregulating negative expression of genes.
Okay.
Disease.
Okay. So that means that you are working with more negativity than positivity, and so your body can't quite heal itself because it's just too many toxins to deal with. Okay.
And I think people don't realize this, and this is a very important point. Okay. I detox twice a year.
My goodness.
Twice a year, every year, for 20 years.
So what does a detox look like?
It's varying depending on each patient, and that's where I design a specific detoxification for that individual and just decreasing their toxic burden, because our world is very toxic. I mean, everyone knows this, right?
Absolutely.
But do they do anything about it? And going to, the natural food store or doing this or doing that or doing a juice cleanse is not enough. It has to be really designed to work on, glucuronidation, sulfonation, these pathways, detox pathways.
Okay. So it's not always just food choices. It's also lifestyle choices.
It's lifestyle choices, but nutraceuticals that help support elimination of toxins.
What's nutraceuticals?
Supplements.
okay.
Medical grade.
Great. Okay. That makes sense.
So then there's the detox, and then there's infections in the gut or systemic infections throughout the body, whether that be in the gut or, UTIs or whatever, kidney infections. So that's important to address because, most everybody has gut infections. If you've never done a stool test, if you've never worked on your gut, you have gut infections.
That is, I'm going to skip a couple of questions here because you've pointed out something that when you think about what Hippocrates said thousands of years ago, that all disease starts in the gut. And it's just kind of coming back now and we're just sort of starting to talk about it, how important gut health is and how it's connected to the rest of the body. What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think we lost that path and we're kind of finding it again now?
It's a great question. I mean, yeah, it's interesting how we knew that already and it's been forgotten. And then, now functional medicine, maybe other different models of medicine are realizing it. But functional medicine, I think, really has coined that space, that digestion and the whole body is connected. It's a whole wellness treatment with functional medicine. And so I agree. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, says all disease begins in the gut. And I totally agree. If you do not have a healthy gut, you cannot be healthy. And so if everybody that I've done or work with, we do stool test and they have gut infections, and that is one of the root causes that are driving the disease. So if we handle, and heal their gut, then they can be healthier. So it's very important. Plus there's a gut-brain connection. There's, the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body. That goes from the mouth to the anus. So that literally is the longest nerve in the body. And it connects many different pathways and connecting the gut and the brain.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about this nerve and the connectivity. Can you give us examples of things that affect it and make it not function at its best?
So stress is one.
Oh.
Yeah. Stress is, so our nervous system runs off of parasympathetic and sympathetic.
Okay. And the differences are?
Sympathetic is stress. It's everybody in the world, right?
Okay.
We live in California. Who's not stressed in California, right?
Absolutely.
Especially if you drive the freeways.
Oh my goodness.
So stress response is sympathetic.
Okay.
And parasympathetic is the rest and digest. And this is how we are in relaxed mode and we can fall asleep.
Okay.
So when people, so our nervous system runs off of this parasympathetic, sympathetic all the time. And these are the actions that take place without us having to think about it.
Okay.
So eat, poop, walk, talk, think, all that.
Things that just happen without you even thinking about it. Right. It just
so your heart rate, your blood pressure, all these kinds of things, right? Thyroid function, hormone function, all this. And so when that system is off or you're stuck in sympathetic, then you are like a car that you got your foot on the pedal and you never press the brakes.
Oh my.
So then your system gets worn out, your body gets worn out. And then that affects your brain, your gut, your, blood pressure and all the things that are controlled by the autonomic nervous system.
What would you recommend to people who are overstressed, they don't realize it? Things are just like on hyperdrive all the time and things are happening. It's affecting their nervous system. It's affecting their gut. It's affecting their concentration. But doctor, I'm trying to sleep as much as I can. I'm eating healthy, but the stress is there. What would you recommend? What kind of lifestyle changes do you recommend to patients like that?
Yeah, we look at all that when they become a patient, when we work together for sure. I mean, that's what functional medicine really excels at. I think too is not only root cause and finding the root cause, the whole lifestyle approach to the whole person well-being. And part of that is, I love neurofeedback for that. That's brain treatments, meditation, exercise. People don't exercise enough. Right?
Yeah.
We are very sedentary, and exercise is a good outlet. Even if you're doing quick exercise in the morning, I like doing HIIT exercises.
What's HIIT exercises?
High intensity interval training.
Okay.
So 3 to 5 minutes of a high intensity interval training is at least enough to get your cortisol up.
Okay.
Driving, if people have adrenal fatigue, the slow starters.
Oh, okay.
So if you do this in the morning, it helps get the cortisol up, but also then it, gives you that little boost in the morning versus a caffeine. And so exercise, meditation, walking, prayer, all these things are great to help the nervous system. There's vagus nerve exercises.
Can you mention a couple of those? What is an example of vagus?
Yeah, you can actually.
What is it?
Vagus nerve. Yeah.
Vagus nerve exercise.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can probably YouTube this. I've showed this for my patients, but it's where you drink through the straw, you gargle, you do little things like that.
Really? And that sort of resets, or how does that?
Yeah, it helps activate the vagus nerve, which allows it to calm down.
That's
but there's
amazing.
Many different other ways.
Sure, but it sounds like so simple. I could be doing that in my car while I'm driving, or just when I'm thinking about something, just gargle. That's amazing. Now you've mentioned the topic of thyroid health. Now I've noticed in some of your services that you offer, thyroid health was one of the big ones that you touch on, and I know that was something that you suffered with personally. What are some of the markers that one could be looking for in a lab test?
So there's a total of 9 markers that I run, and I run on every patient. I always learn if you're not testing, you're guessing, right?
Okay.
So you need to always screen these things. And unfortunately with insurance, they sometimes think it's not medically necessary. So this is where, again, it's not, the doctor or conventional. Sometimes it's insurance that's not allowing these things to be happening. So the test would be TSH, total T3, total T4, reverse T3, T3 uptake, TPO antibodies, thyroid globulin antibodies, and I think I said them all.
So are these like blood tests? Are they like spit tests? Like what is the experience? If I'm coming and I was like, doctor, I need a full thyroid, marker test. What are you taking from me? Are you taking samples? What are you taking?
Yeah, we actually send you out to a lab, and it's a blood work.
Okay.
This one is a blood work, and you will go to a lab and get the blood draw.
Okay.
It's very simple, and again, it really gives us a great insight. There's 28 mechanisms of thyroid disease, and this is why it's important to look at all these markers, because just looking at a TSH is not even touching a portion of thyroid disease.
So you've mentioned that there, if I had a thyroid problem, or it is possibly a thyroid problem, and you take a blood sample. Now, my regular doctor takes a blood sample. Why isn't he finding out the same things you're finding out? Why aren't they looking at the same things?
I think it's just really different models, different models of care and different treatments. And that's the reason why.
Okay.
And because of the way functional medicine practitioners are taught, we're taught to look at the 28 mechanisms of thyroid disease. We're taught to look at, subclinical issues, preventing disease before a person gets disease. And with conventional, again, they're there to save our life. And thank God, we need every model of care. Believe me, I use everyone.
Absolutely.
And they're there to save our life and to intervene when we are in a disease state, right? So with functional medicine, we have functional medicine ranges that are different than lab ranges. We look at the lab ranges, which again are bigger, but with functional medicine, we have tighter ranges so that I'm going, okay, here's what's going on with you now. If you do nothing at this point, you're in a pattern that you will be diseased if you don't address it.
Interesting. You're right, because a doctor will never tell you like, oh, okay, you're about to be sick, or if you keep doing this, you're gonna get sicker. That's very interesting. Now, I've also heard of what is this? Hashimoto's. It can be a pretty tough condition to deal with. Some things people can do. What are some things that people can do to protect their thyroid health?
Yeah. So Hashimoto's is autoimmune hypothyroid, right?
Okay.
So low thyroid with autoimmune component, which means you have TPO antibodies or thyroglobulin antibodies. And the most common cause of hypothyroid, low thyroid, is Hashimoto's in the United States.
Okay.
So that's important to know. It's important that a lot of patients have hypothyroidism
Okay.
and they don't even know if they are Hashimoto's.
How do I know if I have if I have thyroid health, and then if I have specifically Hashimoto's?
That's specific antibodies tests, so TPO antibodies, thyroglobulin antibodies. And oftentimes, maybe they get tested and a patient just forgets, or they're not mentioned and talked about much. But with autoimmune, it's very important to know that you're autoimmune or you are crossing over into autoimmune, because with autoimmune patients, you really need to own your triggers. You need to know what are causing me to have a flare-up or create more autoimmunity. So autoimmune is where the body attacks itself. So with Hashimoto's, it would be the body attacking the thyroid. And so then you get spill out of thyroid hormone and you feel, anxious, you feel sad, you feel everything slows down, like all these different kind of varying symptoms. And oftentimes I get patients that say they just don't feel like themselves. They're not the person they used to be. Sometimes, they have, moodiness or, just sad kind of feelings or anxious,
Okay.
and not sure why, or racing heartbeat or anything like that.
I certainly know that if I went with, to my doctor with these kind of symptoms, they would be like, go to a psychiatrist and take some antidepressants, that's, what are some solutions that you would give to your patients?
For the Hashimoto's?
Yes, for this kind of.
Yeah. So for autoimmune in general, autoimmune is when the body has stopped recognizing self and a foreign invader.
Aha. This is when it attacks itself.
Yeah.
And okay.
So we really need to identify again. I keep going back to triggers and root causes. And this is what makes my life so simple and easy.
You have an easy life?
Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe not so simple and easy, but for me, it's really fun. It's sort of like, I'm looking at your body and going, what's wrong with it? Where's it breaking down? So I'm just looking at where are some root causes? What are the triggers?
Yes.
And when we do that, then that helps you, the patient, not trigger into an autoimmune. Or if they are already autoimmune, they don't have flares. So we call it going into remission.
What are some of the flares that are most common in your patients? So that if a listener is listening and like, wait, I don't like, okay, so people are sick, I get it. But if you give examples, they, maybe it can resonate with them and be like, oh, wait a second.
Some of the triggers that or how a patient shows a flare.
Both. I was going to go from one to the other, but let's. What are some of the triggers, and then what does that feel like on the other end once you are triggered and your body attacks yourself?
Sometimes it could be the most innocuous thing. I mean, honestly, it could be your shower's too hot.
Really?
Yeah. It could be environmental toxins, and that's like
the winds have shifted.
Yeah. Or the fire retardant furniture, or the VOCs in the home or office, or,
what is a VOC?
Volatile chemicals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That, are sprayed with on the furniture or things like that. So
that's some of the stuff that makes it like anti-inflammatory and that kind of thing. Okay. Yeah.
So
that's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Oh my goodness.
And it didn't used to be. Imagine our great-great-grandparents.
Right.
This wasn't the case. So that, or the winds change, the weathers change, or you have a stressful emotional day.
Okay.
I mean, anything can really flare you up. Now, what does a flare look like? It's varying in every autoimmune patient. It could be, fatigue. It could be swelling of the joints. It could be if you have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. It could be, increased bowel movements.
Okay.
It could be anything that creates a flare. And depending on what type of autoimmune you have, or your weak link, then it would be in that space.
So just when you thought that home is your safe space, nowhere is safe. Everything is sprayed with something. Even the weather shift can affect you.
Yes, it's a lot of work to look at that, I'm sure, and hear as a patient. But it's true. You got to really be on your toes and be preventative. And this is where, for 20 years I've been doing this, so it's second nature to me. And when patients, maybe don't know what to do or don't know how to do all this kind of stuff, it can be very overwhelming. So reading a book and DIY, do it yourself, is great. If you can do that, do it. But there is so much to know.
Absolutely.
And so many places to look that you want the trained eye to help you with that most of the time. And really, it's like that shortcut version. I hire people that do what they do to help me, do my accounting work or my bookkeeping or my, whatever the case may be, so that I can focus in my zone.
And that can take some of your stresses away.
Yes.
Some stuff that's off your plate. These are professionals. They can handle the professional stuff, and I can
Exactly. I love washing my car. It's actually very relaxing, but do I do it? No. Sort of that.
Well, but it sounds like that's something you probably should be doing if it's relaxing to you,
it's actually
correct?
True. Yes, yeah. But I take that time and go exercise.
Okay, so that's still, okay. It makes sense. Now, we have talked about autoimmune disease and how it affects your body. Now, what type of, let me see. Oh, yes. You've touched on leaky gut syndrome. Now, how does that affect your overall health besides just digestive issues?
Thank you for going back to that, because we got into the conversation and I didn't ping that when we were in the autoimmune space.
Absolutely.
So,
no, we're kind of
all tied together. So,
yes.
Leaky gut is where you have pinhole leaks in the gastrointestinal system, and where what happens is when you eat food, your digestive enzymes are activated by chewing a food, mastication. Mm-hmm. So amylase is the first digestive enzyme that's activated by chewing.
Okay.
People need to chew their food 20 to 30 times. Most people don't do that. Try that. Everyone do that today.
I know. Now I'm going to start counting.
You need to, because it's probably a third of that. Wow. Realistically.
Okay. So
therefore, this digestive enzyme activates other digestive enzymes. So lipase, hydrochloric acid, amylase, all these digestive enzymes to break down food.
So that's stuff that's released inside your gut to get ready to break down the food that's coming.
Exactly. Okay. Now, that is if it's food. If it's genetically modified, we don't have digestive enzymes for that, right? Oh. So then the food gets broken down, hopefully. And if it doesn't, this bulbous food stays in your digestive tract, right? Undigested. And then it starts to make holes in your gut.
Interesting.
So the tight junctions, the mucosal lining, which is the tight junctions, which is like your mouth.
Yeah.
Starts to open. Food, feces, other things start to leak through the digestive tract into the bloodstream. Oh. The bloodstream says, "Hey guys, what are you doing here?" And they act like you're an invader, so they send in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine to attack. This antigen response, which is happening, the immune system's activated. The antigen response starts to happen. It tries to attack this food and kill it, which it can't.
Oh my goodness.
So therefore, this goes on and on every single day.
Right.
And then activates autoimmunity. So
because it's constantly fighting this foreign product in your bloodstream.
Exactly.
So what happens to that when it's just in there? What happens eventually?
I mean, eventually it gets broken down, it gets attacked, or it stays there and bypasses by many different functions. But when it happens on a daily basis, your body doesn't get a break.
It's just constantly fighting.
Right.
You're always in fight mode, and you can't even deal with other things like stress, like, having to focus, like whatever, whatever else. Interesting.
And so that's leaky gut. And leaky gut is what creates autoimmune.
Okay. Would you say that is the biggest cause that creates autoimmune?
Yeah, I would say that you can't have autoimmunity if you don't have leaky gut. And that's a pretty big statement.
Wow. That is a pretty big statement.
Yeah, I think if you have a healthy gut and you don't have leaky gut, then you're protective from autoimmunity.
Fascinating. Okay. So it really is all in your gut.
Right.
So we've covered a lot of subject. We've talked about leaky gut. We've talked about the nervous system. We've talked about autoimmune disease. Now I want to talk about diabetes. Now I know it can be sometimes a very hard subject to keep straight. Can you kind of give us a breakdown of the different kinds of diabetes?
So diabetes type 1 is an autoimmune component.
Okay.
So this is where the body is attacking the islet cells in the pancreas, which doesn't allow the body to produce enough insulin.
Okay, so this is once again the body attacking itself.
Yep.
And this is something that you can just develop?
So usually you develop that it's diagnosed more in the teenage years.
Aha.
Okay, so early diagnosis.
Got it.
Type 2 is more of a chronic disease where it's lifestyle usually, stress that is a factor, and diet. And this is where the body stops making enough glucose and insulin in the body, and the blood sugars rise. Oftentimes this is a cellular disease, so where glucose cannot get into the cells as well. So then the blood sugars rise because insulin is stuck in the cell.
So this is something that you develop from your life choices, your lifestyle makes your body stop producing the glucose, and then the sugar rises.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's okay. And the third kind?
And so there's a 1.5.
Oh, okay.
Which is a combination of the two.
Okay.
And so this would be, look like a diabetes type 2, but also have an autoimmune component diagnosed later in life and have a combination of those two. And then there's a type 3, which is more of cognitive decline, and where there's not enough blood sugar and glucose, because we need glucose throughout the cells to have energy.
Right. Glucose is what gives you energy,
Yep.
right? Okay.
And so when you don't have that, then you can have cognitive issues, brain, memory issues.
Now, these are all things that are developed from your lifestyle, or is any type of diabetes inherited? Or is it just more like you inherit the likelihood to get it?
So, 1.5 is definitely, can be genetic because of the autoimmune component. But also, again, I want people to understand, because oftentimes I hear, my mom has it, my dad has it, right? Mm-hmm. And this is where, when I was in school to get my doctorate, I was going and seeking out why I felt the way I did. And I'm like, it has to be thyroid because my mom has it, my dad has it, right? Mm-hmm. However, when you handle root causes, you don't activate that genetic expression of whatever your mom and dad have, or your genes.
Okay.
So you can have the genetic, the genes for it,
right.
But you can prevent it. You can downregulate that expression by handling what could be driving that.
Interesting. So even if you have the potential of catching it or developing it, you can live your whole life without getting diabetes, even if both your parents had it, by changing a few things in your lifestyle.
Absolutely. And that's where I want people to feel empowered and know that they really do have control over their life and their health.
What kind of things can diabetes affect in your body?
So diabetes affects everything that your blood flows to.
Okay.
People don't realize that, right?
Absolutely.
So that's why we're talking about diabetes type 3, the brain.
Yes.
Because the blood flows to the brain. To the feet, this is where you get diabetic neuropathies. Mm-hmm. To the sex organs, the female-male organs, so ED or low libido.
Okay, that's very important. So you're telling me if I have too much candy, I'm going to lose my sex drive.
Yeah, probably.
Oh my gosh. But it's so delicious.
And maybe even other parts, right? Because it does.
Wow.
It really affects your blood flow. Wherever the blood flow is where the glucose and the insulin and all this is secreted, that flows. And then when you have nicking of sugar in the vessels, then it affects the vessels.
That's okay. So how does that affect your heart?
It makes the heart work harder. And then the pumping of the heart then affects, where the blood flow goes. Again, the circulatory issues from top to bottom. And then that really affects your, sex drive, then you got to be on medications that affects that as well. Then it affects your brain. Then it affects, your mood. Absolutely. Then it affects the whole family.
Okay. So that's a very interesting point you just touched on. So how does it affect other people around you?
Chronic disease really affects everyone. It's not just you, the patient, but it affects the people around you because, I think it's important when I'm with a patient that I ask, like, why are you here? And they always talk about their disease. And I'm like, no, why are you really here? Right? Like, how is this affecting your life? What do you want to do that you cannot do? And if you have chronic disease, if anyone's ever been sick, I had mold toxicity a couple of years ago and I've been healthy, but when you have something that affects your health and that time it did, and you start to feel like, oh my goodness, I'm not myself, or I can't do certain things, and you realize how important that is, when you start to lose the ability to live your life the way you want, then I think any amount of money would be worth it.
Now, that's very interesting because you've talked about how, okay, you can be in an environment that, for example, has mold, whether it's in your home, whether it's in a place you work at or go to school, and something you cannot affect, right? Or you don't know about. Now, is it possible through functional medicine and the services that you provide, the personalized plans that you have for these people, for your patients, to affect or in other words, sort of make it less likely to be affected by these environmental issues that are present that you cannot help? The pollution in the air when you're driving, on the 405, the mold at the office that you didn't even know about, the hairspray that someone's using next door, you know what I mean? These kind of things that you can't really have control over. Now, do these personalized plans help you make your body not constantly attack itself or develop any of these symptoms we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think it's important to, be in a preventative mode. Now, most of the time, patients don't come to me in prevention. I do get the once in a while preventative patient, which I love. It's a lot of fun because they're like curious like me, right?
Okay.
But oftentimes, I think it's important to know that so that you don't get sick or don't get affected or are not at the wheel of everything, right?
Absolutely.
The best thing to do is have a mindset of prevention.
Okay.
So in the beginning, if you haven't done anything in your life to be preventative, there's going to be a lot to do, right?
Yes.
You can go fast, you can go slow, but if you actually then handle those items, then you get into a preventative mode or a maintenance mode.
Okay.
And I joke and say that I'm high maintenance.
Oh, I love it. You're in constant maintenance mode.
I am. I
love it.
To take care of patients, I have to take care of myself. And so
I love that. That's so, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's so important. I just see so many like doctors talk about like, oh, this is what you should do. And then you see them in their own lives and they're out, smoking cigarettes and not being mobile, not exercising, eating junk food. So I love to hear that, when doctors are actually practicing what they preach.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, we're all human and there's, no perfect way. And that's what I try to tell my patients. And I think it's important for patients to realize that because sometimes patients just think, okay, because my parents have it, I'm going to get it.
Right. Anyway, so But
that's not true. It's about the lifestyle that you lead and the environmental exposures and all that kind of stuff and emotional impact. like, that you've experienced that can create diseases and upregulate genetic expression. So two identical twins, there was a research article on two identical twins that that got adopted out. One had a healthy, clean environment. The other one had, not so much, lived in a more toxic environment and emotionally and all that. And the identical twin in the healthy, clean environment had no disease. And the other identical twin had, a lot of diseases and problems and stuff like that. So Amazing. It's about your environment that really upregulates the triggers of chronic disease.
Amazing.
More than your genetic expression.
Okay. So,
or more than your genes. The genetic expression is actually, yeah.
Right. That's a whole subject we can go into later. What kind of natural remedies do you suggest to your patients and lifestyle changes can you suggest to maintain a healthy life? Is it different I know it's different for every person, but is there sort of a general, 1, 2, 3, or is there like 5 things you can do a day that like will generally keep you from your body attacking yourself, itself, or keeping you from like being affected by your environment of things that you cannot control?
Yeah, I think it's important, one, to, drink plenty of water.
Okay.
Water is important, but it also has to be filtered water. Not just, any kind of water, because there's, chemicals in the water. There's, bugs and stuff like that in our water. So we need to make sure it's filtered.
Okay.
And drink half your body weight in ounces of water a day. And most people don't do that. So
half your body weight in ounces
of water a day.
Water. Okay.
So if you're, 180, 90 ounces.
Okay.
And then if you exercise, you need to increase that.
Okay.
So that's number one. Water's important. The other thing is there's, classically speaking in the functional medicine world, what we see is there's many people that have vitamin and mineral deficiencies. Mm-hmm. And there's, vitamin D is the number one deficiency in the United States, even in California.
I was going to ask you, do you get patients like that even in California? Like it's
every patient that is, if a patient is not taking vitamin D, they're usually deficient in the blood work.
Wow.
Of vitamin D.
And is that just because we mostly work indoors, we work out indoors,
Absolutely.
We live indoors? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And so there's, deficiencies. So like vitamin D, zinc, magnesium, omegas. So these are important nutraceuticals, and not just any nutraceutical. It's more medical grade nutraceuticals that need to be taken, good quality, that need to be to help support just the biochemical synthesis that happens in the body. Right. And so then also, eliminating as much stress as possible.
Okay. So that's with the meditation and the exercising.
Yes. And then just try to do something like, try for a work-life balance. I mean, I'm talking to myself when I'm speaking about that one. But I think it's important to also, do the things that you love. I love what I do, and thank goodness I love what I do, because I don't think if a doctor didn't love what they did, then it would be a long road, right? Because there's a lot of studying, and there's a lot of, requirements and years of schooling, and even when you get out of school, a lot of education and seminars, and
you have to keep up with what's coming new and what's next, and like all the evolution of everything. Absolutely, the new studies.
I think last year I took 200 hours of CEUs, which is far more than I should, but that's just the way I am. I love to learn.
Yes.
So I think it's important to have that work-life balance, but also do something that you love. Whether it be, if you can't do what you love at work, then go do what you love on the side. Like if it's traveling or being with your kids or, volleyball or basketball, whatever it is, just do it. Surfing,
Right. No, I think that's something they did in France, that they passed like a law a few years ago where I think like the workers kind of protested, and then they finally brought down the sort of the work hour requirement per week was 33 hours a week. And then because they insisted that everyone should have that life balance, a life-work balance, where like, work is not life. You can work for 33 hours a week, but then you can also have, trips with your kids or soccer or, basketball or go camping or whatever. And they found that these workers have become more productive.
Absolutely. I know I'm more productive when I take little mini vacations, long week, long weekend or, and still the vacations every couple of 3 to 6 months.
Absolutely.
I think it's important for our mindset, keeping your mind body connection healthy as much as possible.
It's so important to remember that, because I know like in some environments you're taught that work is life. Like why are you being lazy? You have to work. Right. Make sure that you're, doing something. Yeah. So taking a vacation is also doing something. Right. Is for your mental health. So we've talked about so many different things that can affect you. See, I am curious about the types of patients that walk into your clinic. Now, what kind of patients do you see?
I see patients, unfortunately, a lot of times they're chronic disease patients, okay. Right? So that would be thyroid, autoimmune, diabetes, cognitive decline even. And, anything in between that, any autoimmune disease, which are IBS, gut issues, concussion type patients that are having, wow. Sleep issues, anxiety, depression. We really help a lot of type of symptoms. All these are symptoms.
Really runs
right?
the gamut.
Yeah, because every symptom crosses over into a specific or another disease. Right. So, and by doing that, we usually, can focus on improving their health from inside out. Mm-hmm. Right.
And do you find a specific age group that walks into your clinic?
Usually it's funny, you treat certain things and then you get everything, and then you treat, certain demographics. And I usually see between 30 and 50-year-old women. Oh. But then I have 6-year-old patients and,
wow.
Unfortunately some
sure.
autoimmune, young
yeah.
patients that are sick.
Yeah.
So, and then I have, I think my youngest patient now is maybe a year and a half.
Oh my goodness.
And that's more because mom comes in. So we, do adjustments and stuff like that. And then the oldest patient is 88 or something like that.
Wow.
So a big broad spectrum, but really it's between the, 30 to 50-year-old female that then brings in the whole family.
Yeah, right.
Because the man's usually coming in because the wife said so, right?
Yeah, that's usually the trend. You're right. Now, for that 1.5-year-old, do you think that's a good start for them to, adopt, it's an early enough stage where that infant can become, can have that lifestyle ingrained in their life from early on. They don't have to, learn bad habits and then, correct them.
Yeah.
Is that a good advice in general for people to like, hey, maybe this is something you should know about before even getting sick? Like there's some things outside of your control. They're going to get you. It's better to know how to prevent it before it even happens.
Yeah. Well, I think because we do, the office, at Vaughan Vitality Wellness, we try to focus on a one-stop shop.
Okay.
So I have associates that do many different things. I, focus on the functional medicine and brain treatments and neurofeedback, but we have, soft tissue, we have chiropractic, we have functional medicine, we have neurofeedback, which are the brain treatments.
Okay.
We have QEG, which is the brain scans, and we have nutritionists, so we try to offer many different aspects. So, getting regular adjustments sometimes is great for the nervous system. And, kids are pulled out by their heads, right? So sometimes mom comes in and wants to get the child checked, and we do that as well.
I have heard about that, where newborns, just kind of getting them adjusted can kind of get them off to a good start.
Yeah. And then, of course,
you don't think about that.
The whole wellness starts at home. Right?
Absolutely.
So whatever mom and dad are doing, the child's going to do.
Absolutely. Now, I'm glad you touched base on all the services you offered, and I want to go into detail into some of them. Before we do that, I wanted to ask you about, do you find that the patients that mostly walk into your office have already exhausted all other fields and are coming into you like, hey, look, you're my last resort. I don't know what to do. Or are you the first thing they think about?
I wish. I wish, then it wouldn't be as hard.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no. I think sometimes people come into functional medicine as a Hail Mary and just sort of like, I've tried everything, this is my last resort. And, that's unfortunate because a lot of, my passion and my, my vision for the world is that people do not suffer. Yeah. So many people suffer with chronic disease and it's unnecessary.
Right.
So I'm trying to touch as many people as I can and reach as many people as I can, whether it be me, my associates, or us as a group, holistic doctors and conventional doctors. All of us need to come together and really help patients because so many people suffer. And when they lose their health, they can't achieve or be great. Right.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's important to really focus on that and really strive to help as many people as possible.
And knowledge is power, right?
Exactly.
So because you don't know that you're being exposed to all these things that are dangerous without your control.
Yeah. And ideally, again, switching, I think it's a big part of, we're so taught to go to this kind of model, right? And get treatment and keep doing that, even though it's not working sometimes, right?
Okay.
To be open to trying something else, and this is how I started in my 20s. I was, going to have a surgery and then someone said, hey, go check out my doctor. And I'm like, what is this doctor going to do that everyone else hasn't done? Right.
Right.
And this doctor is a doctor like me and practices holistic functional medicine. And because of doing that, I was able to not have the surgery.
Amazing. So when like a conventional doctor said your only solution is a surgery,
right?
You were able to go to functional medicine, and it helped your body repair itself without having like any intrusion.
Yeah, and he actually told me, worst case scenario, I don't help you and you have to do your surgery later.
Right. Yeah. What do we have to lose?
That was the best idea ever.
That makes sense.
So, just actually supporting and being preventative versus, again, you asked, are they coming in already diseased? Or are they coming in preventative?
Right.
Unfortunately, I get a lot of people that are already diseased.
It's already happening. We need something to fix it.
It's in full blown and it's a Hail Mary sometimes.
And a lot of people have looked at me and no one can help me.
Exactly.
What can you do?
And then they come and then they start to see changes happening and it can be very quickly. I mean, oftentimes it's within a week that people start feeling a change and noticing positive results.
That's fascinating. That's just so beautiful. So you've talked about getting enough water. Let's talk about electrolytes. Can you give me, what is the importance of electrolytes and what are the sources where we can get them?
Yeah. So electrolytes are important for absorption of water.
Aha.
So if you don't have any, nutrients in the water and in your cell, then there's dehydration that's happening. So it takes
even if you're drinking water,
a sodium, potassium gradient in the cell, which is all kind of heady kind of stuff. But these minerals and electrolytes really help the absorption and turn on synthesis in the body. So oftentimes when I do blood work, I see that the electrolytes, the sodium and the calcium and the phosphorus and all these things are off. And so that tells me that their electrolytes are deficient.
And what you're saying is I can drink and drink and drink and drink water all day long, but that doesn't necessarily mean that my body's actually absorbing it, that I'm hydrated.
Correct.
Because I need electrolytes to make that happen.
Yes. Electrolytes are key in getting the water into the cell. And electrolytes would be the sodium, potassium, calcium. There's these gated channels that happen within the body that make this happen. And oftentimes people, are drinking these, electrolyte drinks,
right,
that are high in sugar, which is not good for you.
That's not the point.
No, so you need to have a electrolyte drink or minerals that have no sugar or very little sugar. Okay. And so that helps with the absorption of water. And another thing people don't realize, if you're drinking water and you're not absorbing, it's also you're eliminating, so going to the bathroom a lot.
Right.
Then you have adrenal issues.
Oh, so
because
that causes even more things.
Yes, because the hormones in the adrenals helps the absorption.
Oh my goodness. So you've talked about gut-brain connection. That could be a very nebulous concept. And can you help us understand a little bit what that is, what it means for a person, and how we can use that knowledge to make us feel better?
Yeah. So have you ever had a stomach ache?
Of course.
And then how well do you think?
Oh, terribly. I can't think about anything else.
Right.
All I'm thinking was like,
Except for your stomach hurts,
exactly.
right?
Yes.
So there's that, close relationship and connection there, and it's connected by the vagus nerve.
Okay.
The vagus nerve is the longest nerve of the body. However, people don't realize that if you've got leaky gut,
yes,
you have leaky brain most of the time, or you can. And
now,
so
is that a condition, or is that like just a term?
It's actually a condition.
Really?
Yeah. So this is where you then get the memory issues, the brain fog, or sleep issues, or anxieties and depressions. So the gut-brain connection is closely related, and when you work on one, you work on the other. Oftentimes you need to work on both. Right.
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? So which do you treat first, or is it kind of both together?
Yeah. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said gut, right?
Yeah, that's true. He did.
Now the brain, when you get to see the, a human brain and in such awe of how everything is so connected, and being a doctor, you get to really see that visual. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so everything is connected, and we can't separate our parts.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm a sort of now going back between, gut and brain, because they're so important. I mean, the brain is the thing that keeps you alive and controls you.
Right.
The gut, again,
but you need to keep it healthy so that you can concentrate and think and focus.
Yeah. So to me, they're both number one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you can't fix one without the other, right? But you can't if you fix the gut, you can fix the brain.
Yes.
Essentially. Yeah. But so it goes hand in hand. It almost is inseparable.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now, does that have anything to do with the neurofeedback? That's a word you've mentioned earlier. Can you give us a little bit of an explanation of what that is?
Yeah. Neurofeedback is essentially brain training. So what we do is we're trying to build new neuroplasticity. Mm-hmm. Neuroplasticity is how the brain pathways operate and connect, how you learn things, how you unlearn memories.
Okay.
Right. And how you can learn how to remember things and move forward and calm down the brain. So when we do brain training, we're looking at the alpha, beta, theta, delta waves, the brain waves.
Right.
And when the brain waves are out of sync or too high or too low, this is where we get symptoms of defect, meaning anxieties, depressions, brain fog, memory issues, sleep disorders.
Wow.
Yeah. So when we work on neurofeedback, the brain, by doing neurofeedback, then we can balance out these brain waves, ADHD, concussions, and we can give people's lives back. I mean, I have seen so many people, one that had a hard time studying, people that have been in traumatic issues, like, car accidents or other emotional traumatic issues, and, anxieties and depressions, and just really have a hard time trying to do what they want to do or life. And they come do brain training and neurofeedback, and it really changes their lives.
So that's the service you offer, that it's a specialized, specific thing that you do.
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Is it kind of like therapy?
No, it's actually working. So therapy is more talk therapy, right?
Okay.
You go in and you're talking about a thing, which, we have, we do that as well, because, I'm there or the clinician's there.
Absolutely.
So we do a lot of that, meaning talk about what's going on with them and all that, but it's not to replace therapy. Therapy is great in adjunct with this.
Okay.
Neurofeedback is actually looking at your brain and saying, where in the brain do you have issues?
So you can actually see what's working, what's not.
So the QEG is
That was my next question.
Yep, the
Thank
QEG
you for
is
going
the brain
into that.
test.
Okay.
Where we can see what's going on in the brain. We actually hook you up, you wear a cap. You can see, highlighted parts, and it's actually looks like an EEG of the heart.
Right.
But it's an EEG of the brain.
Okay.
And so you can see what's going on in the brain real time. And then we get, that's the test, the QEEG, and then we get a treatment that makes the plan for the neurofeedback based on each person's brain.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's really cool.
That is fascinating. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Now, how is that different than a regular brain scan?
So there's a brain scan for MRI. There's a CT. Each one's looking at something different. And this is where patients come to me, and this is a question I ask. Have you ever had a concussion? And patients are like, no, But when I dive deeper and ask questions, oftentimes there's been some kind of, hit to the brain or hit to the head.
Yeah.
And so patients think that they have to be knocked out or have a brain bleed.
Right.
And that is where an MRI and CT comes in. Mm-hmm. So when an MRI is looking more at the soft tissue, CT is looking at the actual skull and stuff like that.
Interesting.
So everything, again, this is why it's so confusing to patients, because everything tells you something different.
Right.
Every test looks at something completely different.
Yeah.
And you don't know that. Like, so you think I just did a blood work and I just did an MRI and I'm good.
That should be enough, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot to look at already,
Right.
but not even like you're basically scratching the surface, barely.
Yeah.
My goodness, I'm learning so much. Okay, so let's talk about heavy metal toxicity, because that sounds really scary, and it sounds like something that everyone should be concerned about. How important is it to get a test for that?
I mean, from where my patient demographic is, I see a lot of sick patients. So to me, it happens more often than not, right?
Okay.
So I ask certain questions that help us lead down to the road. Do we really need to go there? Sure. However, in our soil, in our air, in the, if you're a certain age, like 50, 60, you've had lead paint in your life, lead pipes in your life. Mm-hmm. If you've ever had mercury fillings, and that's usually, again, a cutoff between 40 and older. Mm-hmm. You've probably had mercury fillings.
Right.
So all this is heavy metal toxicity. But you can really get heavy metal toxicity from, the soil, because metals come from rocks, right?
Right.
So you can get heavy metal toxicity from, the water you're drinking. So I think it's important if first, don't just go do a test, right?
Okay.
I mean, you can.
Right.
It can be a lot of money, but don't just go do a test. I think it's important to look at what are some of the top tests that need to be run. What are some of what are your root causes that you need to look at? The top 2 or 3 to address. Mm-hmm. And then, if you've done that, then look at the other stuff. But if you think heavy metals is a thing, like my story,
right,
where I had my mercury fillings taken out and immediately started having symptoms, or if you can remember back, hey, that was a trigger.
Right.
I haven't felt the same since, then go get that test.
Okay. Interesting. Let's talk about chronic disease and how that has become more and more common. It's a subject that you hear about and it's brought up more frequently. Can you tell us why there's a cause for this trend? Is there a specific thing that is changed in our society that has caused us to have more chronic disease?
I think a lot has changed in our society. We just got out of a pandemic, right?
Really?
So nothing's ever going to be the same, and nothing's the same 5-10 years ago, right?
Absolutely.
So number one, stress.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Creates chronic disease.
Okay.
And stress can be from our outside stress to the inside stress, right?
Yes.
So that's also the foods we eat. And our foods are, I tell my patients, if it's not from the ground, from a tree, or from God or whatever, right? It's not food.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that you can make it really simple. Right. So if it's in a box, it's really not food.
Okay.
So that means it's chemicals.
Right.
Right. So that's a stressor. And that's what we're doing every day, which leads to chronic disease.
Yeah.
And then also, the toxicity, the toxicity burden that's being put on us. And then our offsprings now have toxicity within their cell that is handed off from us to them.
Right.
So now they're being born into this world sicker than we were or our great grandparents, right?
Right.
So unfortunately, they're starting, a little behind in some cases. So because of the emotional stress, the toxicity stress, the gut dysfunctions, and the, us handing down, epigenetics and stuff like that, that is creating more chronic disease than we've ever had in our entire world.
That's amazing. So it's not just people who lived in the lead paint area and the lead pipes era, and it's happening now. It's worse now than it was before.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And you have to think about the 5G and the cell phones. We have no idea what they're doing. The
Absolutely.
Impact. So everything.
A lot of things
everything
that you're actually not seeing and don't, think about on a daily basis. They're, I'm sure affecting all of us. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the environments that we create for ourselves to try to protect ourselves, from as much control as you can have. So let's take, for example, my home. How does one protect themselves in their home? Like, is there anything that is making me sick in my house that I don't know about? And what can I do to prevent that?
Yeah, I think, again, we talked about making sure you're getting more natural materials, right? I know sometimes
very difficult.
Yeah,
you really kind of have to go digging.
And it can be very expensive, right? You want more natural, not treated, not a lot of chemicals, which create the volatile chemicals and the VOCs. But also we want to look at I'm very hypersensitive to mold. I'm sensitive to mold, but I'm hypersensitive to mold because of my experience, plus what I do, because I've seen mold really affect and literally kill people. Right?
Oh my goodness. Toxic mold sounds pretty scary. How can someone know if they have it in their body, and what can they do about it?
Yeah. So mold is a very smart species. It's actually fungal. And so it grows on itself or by itself.
Okay.
So how to know is you can test your home, right? You can get these at-home swipe tests, or you can do Petri dish, which, sometimes are not as good, I don't think.
Okay.
But you can swipe the home and send it off, and you'll get the actual mold species or species. Our whole environment has mold, right?
Oh, okay.
Outside. Okay. There's outside molds and there's indoor molds. And indoor molds, what you want to look for is water damage molds. And Dr. Shoemaker is one of the doctors I studied under that developed these, a certain set of mold species or water damage building species are the ones you really, really want to watch out for. So you can test your home. You can actually have a water meter, which tests if there's a moist wall. Okay. If there's any kind of water damage, like a leak pipe, the tub runs over, the washer and dryer runs over, a sink has a leak, anything like that, you want to make sure you address it and address it quick, but also address it correctly. Because what happens is, let's say the handyman down the street comes and handles the leak, but he doesn't actually get rid of the mold by cutting out where the mold is. So if there's actual visual mold, it's a mold spore and it's a fungal species, which can grow and then build to grow behind the wall.
What does that do to me?
So when mold grows, or when you come in contact with mold, you breathe in mold, and it's a spore that goes in the body, and then that can colonize, grow in many parts of the body, whether it be the gut, the skin, the brain, the nasal cavity.
Oh my.
Like we even test nasal cavities to see if there's a thing called MARCONS, which is multiple antibiotic resistant coagulase negative. And so we test to see if a person has this bacteria and fungal in their nose.
Right. Oh my goodness. So it could take over your whole body.
And it can really affect people differently. This is the thing that people don't realize.
Okay.
Like someone in the family could be totally fine.
Okay.
Or maybe they think they're fine and they have like, fatigue or joint pain, or it's not that big of a deal, right?
Okay, sure.
But the other person can be literally can't sleep, can't think, extremely tired, not sure what's going on, and have digestive issues or skin issues.
That's a lot. And for the same thing.
In the same family, the same home, and it affects people completely different.
Okay.
But it is a serious thing that needs to be addressed. And why, I think because our microbiome in the home has changed with all the, EMFs and VOCs. So it changes like everything has a microbiome.
Right.
Like our gut. And so it starts to shift that, and then these things have to live.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, let us talk about the subject of anti-aging. Comes up so often on so many different levels and different professions. Now, what is the meaning of anti-aging to you? And what are your thoughts on the different solutions that are out there?
So anti-aging to me is really, again, prevention.
Okay.
I don't know that everybody looks at it like that, but I do. Because you could do all these fancy other things, looking at your telomeres and all this kind of stuff. But if you haven't done the foundational pieces, are you eating healthy? Are you handling your gut issues? Do you have cognitive decline? Or, the first sign of cognitive decline is memory issues, right? So, or brain fog.
Right.
Are you handling those kinds of things? It's important to address that foundational piece before you get like in the hierarchy of anti-aging. A lot of times people think anti-aging though is, the hormonal piece, and the Botox and the this and the that, right? But it's also really looking at foundational pieces and making sure you're healthy and preventative, so that you are preventing disease, living longer, anti-aging, right? Longevity.
Right. So in the way you're putting it, sounds like anti-aging is more, like you're saying, it's preventative, but is it reversible? In the sense that once your organs have aged due to, autoimmune or diabetes or any of the other things that we've talked about, is it possible to go back in time and add time to our, life, say, or because of the change in quality, is that anti-aging?
Absolutely, yeah. I believe our body is meant to heal. We give it the right thing, then it can heal naturally. Now, sometimes it's past a point. You don't want to push it, right?
Sure, right.
You don't want to test that.
Absolutely.
I don't, but but I definitely think our body is meant to heal, and if given that right tool, it will heal naturally.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's just I help navigate that process.
Now, we've talked about diet and, let's say quote unquote diet, since it's a life change, it's a lifestyle change. But when someone hears the word diet, there's so many different types out there, and there are, ones that claim that this one is better for your gut. No, this one's better for losing weight. This one's better, you have more energy. In your professional opinion, which is the best diet out there?
I think it, again, goes back to lifestyle change, and it's based on each person individually. Okay. But if you, I have patients that come and say, hey, this diet, what do you think of that diet? Like some of these diets I haven't even heard of. It's like, let me look it up.
Wow.
Everybody coins diet, but
right.
I think the most important thing is, really increasing vegetables, having a good, solid, organic, grass-fed kind of protein.
Okay.
And, I call it a splatter of fruit. So a couple servings of fruit a day, not too much fruit.
Not too much.
And then very low carbs, right?
Very low carbs, splatter of fruit, more vegetables, and more grass-fed protein.
Yeah, organic, grass-fed.
Organic, yes.
Good protein sources.
Okay. What about the people who, are insistent that, gluten-free has helped me, gosh darn it, and I am, I have better focus when I'm gluten-free, or, I'm on the keto diet and that has helped me lose weight. And if I just stick to it, then that'll work for you too. Do you think these are things that are actually happening, or do you think that, because we believe it's happening, it happens, that kind of thing? Do you believe these diets actually work for people?
I mean, I do think some of these diets are good and they have a good base, right?
Okay.
So gluten-free is big. Gluten is usually genetically modified. It also is cross-reacts with structures in the body. Mm-hmm. So being gluten-free does help a lot of people, right? And people go, but Dr. Vaughan, I'm not allergic to gluten.
Right.
But there's a whole different capacity. There's gluten sensitivity, mm-hmm. gluten intolerance. There's genetic, there's celiac disease. Mm-hmm. And there's genes that then say you should not be eating gluten.
Kind of like you were mentioning with the leaky gut. Like sometimes, I'm not allergic to it, but it is affecting it is doing something without my knowledge. Right. And now I'm having, all these different things that you don't think are related to the gut.
Right, exactly.
But it's actually affecting you in real life,
And I think when it comes to keto or paleo or whatever, then it's also a big part of those kinds of diets, or any diet, is people are then starting to be more mindful, right? Yeah. They're starting to be more mindful while they're on this diet. So of course they're going to feel better versus just eating everything in a way, right?
That's true. And I feel like it's more accepted to talk about. And so now restaurants and food makers are making it more available. Like, this is now an option. We can give you the gluten-free option or the lactose-free option or vegan or whatever. So,
and I think every, so-called diet mm-hmm. has a good foundational component. Again, cutting down on the carbs, not having high carbs or low carb, mm-hmm. That's ketogenic. So if you do that, you're going to feel better.
Okay.
Right. So, paleo, same thing. So
I'm gonna tell you a little story. When I've produced features before, and sometimes I'll take care of like what food is ordered for the cast and crew. And usually I try to, keep it healthy because I want to keep, everyone moving and going. One day, because the whole scene was around pizza and the actors are going to be talking about pizza and warming up pizza, and everyone was talking about pizza all day long. So I was like, all right, fine, we'll order pizza for everyone. Oh my goodness. Everyone was so sluggish afterwards, and they slowed down, and they were like just so oogie, And I was like, that's all the bread. Like it just slows you down. It does not give you energy.
Yeah. And it's great that you said that. I tell my patients, if you listen, if we were in tune with our body and we listen how we feel, whether I'm around a person, how do I feel being around that person?
Right.
Does it make me happy or does it drain me?
Absolutely.
How do I feel when I eat this thing, right? Does it make me feel good or do I get tired? And I joke and say, no one could eat pizza and feel great.
Oh, it's impossible. There's no way.
It's got,
you feel good because it tastes good, but you don't.
Going down, but after you're done eating it, you need a big nap. You need a big nap and you're sluggish.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, finally, as someone who helps people every day with their health, I'm sure you have some good tips that, for staying healthy yourself. So what do you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah, over the 20 years or so that I've been, in this arena, I've developed sort of my toolbox. I call it my toolbox. And it's sort of like that book that you keep hearing about, or the book that's fallen off the shelf, or your friend keeps mentioning, or that person, or you hear about it. So throughout the time, these decades, I've developed what works for me. So number one, I use functional medicine. Functional medicine means, diagnostic testing to get to the root cause. So I'm always testing myself, specialty testing, blood work, whatever the case may be. Oftentimes, if I'm not working on, like if I don't have an issue, right? Mm-hmm. Like if I have mold, I got to work on mold, right?
Right.
Or if I'm like, hey, oftentimes I just go, I haven't done this test in a while. Let me run this test.
Okay. Yeah.
That's how I do it. And then I'm always taking supplements. So the supplements I'm taking on a daily basis is vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, omega, and magnesium.
Okay.
So those at least, which is a lot.
It is. It's a handful. Yeah, it's a handful of pills right there.
Right? So, and then if I'm working on something else, sometimes they might fall off or I might increase more.
Right. And sorry, before you move on, now these are medical grade supplements.
Yes, medical
Correct.
grade
Okay.
nutraceutical supplements. Yep.
Okay.
And then the other thing is of course I'm drinking plenty of water.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing, my high intensity interval training, the HIIT exercise. I have like a routine that I do in the morning, and then I try to exercise on a daily basis. Although, unfortunately, I'm be truthful. Sometimes I don't get it in when I'm like,
Sure. You got like a busy day or something. You just got to get going. You cut it
patients
out
all day long till
Right.
late. So
Absolutely.
I know that there's certain days that I commit to definitely working out, and then if I get a workout in on those days, it's sort of like a bonus. Right?
Nice. Right.
I do. Also, I get adjusted.
Oh yes. Okay.
Yes. I go get massage, whether it be, soft tissue massage or lymphatic massage.
Mm-hmm.
And, I, eat healthy. You know what? I'm conscious of what I put in my body. And I think, I've done water fasts in the past.
Okay.
And I do think those are great. They're hard. They're great.
Right.
They're very hard. But, when you do a water fast, your relationship with food you look at, right? And you look at the emotional component of what you eat.
Right.
So I think when I do detoxes and fasts, it helps me just get sort of set the playing field again, And so I watch what I eat. I try to eat healthy, protein, vegetables, fruit, low carb. And I also do meditation.
Okay.
And I try to have that work-life balance, hang out with my family, hang out with my friends, vacation, enjoy life. And, in the midst of it, just be grateful. I think important thing too is I can always find something to be grateful for. I am very grateful. And I think sometimes just, I run through a gratitude list in the morning. And when I see people, out in the world that have, you can always find somebody that has it worse than you. And when I see that, I just bless them and thank God that I have what I have.
Right.
And it just really makes me, spiritually grateful for, recognizing this.
I think that puts the system at ease too, because I think it takes away a little bit of the stress. We're like, oh, thank goodness I have a home.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I have options for clothes. Thank goodness I have the option to be able to buy the food that is more expensive, but it's healthier for me.
It's true.
You know what I mean? Just these basic things. And it does, I think, because I feel it too. It does. It calms you down. It's like, it's not that bad. It's not as stressful as I think it is.
And it sort of just puts you right here, right there.
Right.
Instead of way out here or in your head, it really grounds me.
Yes.
Right.
Now, you've mentioned a detox that you do every 6 months. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I use a particular, company usually. I have several companies that I use. And it's really, in January, I always do an elimination and reintroducing. And so I eliminate the most common food sensitivities and reintroduce because your food sensitivities change. So when I teach,
is that right?
Yeah, they can change every year. So
every year you can be sensitive to new foods. Wow.
Yeah. So every January I do some form of a detox, and really that just means supplement nutraceuticals that help support the phase 1, phase 2, glucuronidation, sulfonation, just detox pathways.
Okay.
And then I also do an elimination of foods and reintroducing. And then in June, I just do the supplements.
Okay.
And that really helps keep me, detoxed and cleansed. And I really feel a difference. Now, sometimes I'll do a crazy water fast in between that or something like that. But
is that just for the heck of it, or do you feel like something's changed, so I want to really detox everything?
I mean, I love doing all these kinds of crazy things. A lot of people that know me go, you're crazy or a little much. Most people won't do a water fast, but I think it really helps me reset. So these detoxes are what the average person can do. Most people can't do a water fast, right? It's
sounds
hard.
intense.
Or they can, but they usually don't last into the part of autophagy, which is where the body starts to clean up the cellular debris and the helps with detox.
Right.
So, the nutraceutical detox is more gentle and doable. So it's just taking supplements, right?
Right.
But the part that I love is also, when my patients that I've been seeing for a while, and I am trying to teach what I do, because I feel like I'm a doctor, right? But I want to teach my patients.
Yeah.
I'm not a good doctor if I'm talking at you. I want to teach you, right?
Yeah.
So I want to teach you what I do so that when there's no me or anyone else, that you know what to do, right? So when my patients say, hey, Dr. Vaughan, I haven't done the detox in a while. Maybe I should detox. I'm like, yes, feel like I've taught them well.
Yes,
right?
they've absorbed something.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Dr. Vaughan, thank you so much for coming on our show today. We have learned so much. And do you have any last tips to give our listeners?
Thank you so much, by the way, for this. I really appreciate what you guys are trying to do. I think it's important to get the knowledge out there. And again, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And so then you get to inform patients, that there's different ways. And I think the most important thing is that I would like patients to hear is that just start somewhere, really.
A first step can sometimes be hard.
Just start somewhere. You don't have to do it perfect, but really having, like a doctor, a coach, I tell my patients, I'm your doctor, I'm your coach, I'm your, swift kick in the butt when you need it, and a good shoulder to cry on when you need it.
Wow.
You have to really be all that for a patient oftentimes. And, you can just call us if you ever need anything. We're here. We'll answer any questions. And, my office is Vaughan Vitality Wellness. And you can look us up and give us a call if you need anything.
Wonderful.
But thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having us. Well, it looks like it's a one-stop shop with Dr. Vaughan. So make sure to visit Vaughan Vitality. Dr. Vaughan here with us has been so generous with all the information that she's given us. Purchase her book, go visit her clinic, and be well. For more information, please call Vaughan Vitality Wellness at 714-434-9355 or visit vaughanvitality.com.